Trading upon, selling, and giving away what isn't theirs. February 3, 2020 by Anna von Reitz. What if I offered to sell you the Empire State Building? What kinds of questions would roll through your mind? You'd probably be stunned and think, wow, this lady owns the Empire State Building? Then you might stop and think, is she talking about the Empire State Building in New York? Or some other Empire State Building? And then, depending on whether or not you were interested in such an acquisition, you might ask other questions and want to see proof of ownership, condition of the building, tax status, and all the rest of the issues that go into buying such a thing. The big point is that when someone sells us something, we want to make sure that they own it and have an actual, factual interest in it. We want to nail down exactly what that interest is and what we are talking about. What if, instead, I offered you office space in the Empire State Building? Now, we are talking about a lease instead of a sale. Different questions arise. Now, we are quibbling over how many square feet, access, utilities, insurance, and all those sorts of things. The big point is that when we lease something we have different concerns. Please note that because it is a far lesser offer overall, our attention shifts from the big picture of who does the building belong to the details of the offer. For some reason our logic circuits work perfectly fine when we are dealing with an individual, but slap a different name on the seller or purported landlord, a name like the State of Nevada, or the Federal Land Office or the Federal Taxing Authority, and all such good sense flies out the window. We just assume that we are dealing with the government and that the government is legitimate and acting within the public law and for the public interest. None of those assumptions are valid. The actual government is just now lifting its hand and waking up and doing its job. During the last 150 years, this country has been run by a progressively corrupt series of foreign commercial corporations in the business of providing governmental services. They've come in here and sold everyone a bill of goods in the name of the actual government, and as a result, everything is messed up. Can a third party acting in my name actually sell you my land? Without my knowledge and consent? Obviously not. Can they legitimately act as my proprietor, custodian, and lease my land to you? That depends on whether or not they have a contract to do so. Over the last few days numerous people have been sending me maps showing federal land ownership all over this country, and especially in the western United States. People are assuming that this means that the federal government owns all that land as the actual landlord, but instead, the federal corporations, including their state-of-state corporate franchises, are acting as custodians of land that belongs to the actual state and the people. The territorial United States government has a contract to do this, under the provisions of the Northwest Ordinance, so long as the area in question is still a territory or possession. And that is, in fact, the situation in much of the western United States. Those millions of acres of federal land in Nevada and Utah and Arizona and Colorado and other places throughout the western United States don't actually belong to the federal subcontractors, but they are still operating as custodians under the Northwest Ordinance because the actual state has not taken possession. The actual state isn't organized and peopled, at least according to those who are profiting themselves at our expense. So the federal subcontractors conveniently retain control of land that should by all rights be directly managed by the people of these states acting under their own initiative. The same federal subcontractors routinely hand out homestead land, mining contracts, grazing rights, water rights, and organize soil districts and zoning districts and districts on top of districts to milk and bilk profit out of resources that aren't theirs, by regulating those state resources and providing services that the people of each state should be overseeing and providing for themselves. This is part of the reason that it is so necessary for the people of this country to wake up and get organized by declaring their correct political status and conducting their own business affairs. Gangs of corporations led by persons like Harry Reid have been pillaging the resources of these western states for years and using every excuse in the book for continuing the federal proprietorship, aka ownership. Look up the legal definition of ownership. Here in Alaska, only 1 to 3% of the land is in private hands, and actual private land ownership is virtually unknown because aside from a few actual state-issued mining claims and oddball treaty enclaves, land sales and homestead claims are administered by a federal franchise state of state that doesn't actually have the authority to dispose of our land on any permanent basis. Land sales under such a system are actually just future lease purchase agreements, illusory sales contracts that may or may not take place in the future when the actual people of this state wake up, get their state assembly properly organized, and start taking care of their own business. This is happening now all over the country, but especially in the western states. Such action by local people is urgently necessary. Why? Because the federal subcontractors, which are all operated as private, for-profit commercial corporations, are purposefully going bankrupt, and when the U.S. trustees come in to administer the bankruptcy of the proprietors, it appears that nobody is left in charge of these lands and resources. Where are the actual owners? Where, indeed? We are right here, half asleep. Until we wake up and stand up, together, as the people of each state, it looks like the land of this country is abandoned. It looks like it's all up for grabs and available to be sold or resold by the U.S. bankruptcy trustees to satisfy the creditors of these foreign federal corporations. It looks this way because millions of Americans have been misidentified as U.S. citizens and as citizens of the United States, when in fact, we are neither. It looks this way because millions of Americans have been kept ignorant of the actual situation and therefore fail to take action in their own best interest and the best interests of their country. And this is why, among other reasons, that you need to go to www.theamericanstatesassembly.net and reclaim your identity as an American and start operating your state assembly. Please consider making a small donation to help support Anna von Reitz and the Living Law Firm by visiting theamericanstatesassembly.net. Scroll to the bottom and click on the Donate Now button. Thank you.